Welcome to another episode of Baker's Gonna Bake. I'm your host Sabrina, and today we're making good old apple pie. Now we're gonna start with the crust, and with our crust we're gonna do it in 2 batches. We're gonna start off by making our pie crust. So we'll go ahead and take 2.5 cups of flour and add it to our food processor. And then we also have 1/4 cup of sugar, adding that. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. All right, so now we're gonna put our lid on and we're just going to pulse this until it mixes. Okay, so that's all mixed together, and now we have 2 cups of unsalted butter that is very cold. I left it in the fridge until the moment I was ready to use it, and I cubed it so it mixes in easier. So we're gonna take this and add it to our food processor. We're going to mix this until the butter becomes like the size of lentils. So if it's the size of a pea, it's a little too big. You want to get a little bit smaller than that. All right, we'll go ahead and pulse this now. All right, so that looks good because see, my butter is a lot smaller chunks now. So at this point, I can go in and add my water. Now don't do what I'm doing. Don't stick your hand inside of the food processor. What are you, crazy? There's a blade in there. Okay, now we're gonna slowly start drizzling in our water. We're going to do 5 tablespoons of ice cold water. So while this is going on low, we're going to start that. All right, so now you should know that your dough is done at this point, because if you grab it in your hand and smush it like this, it'll stay clumped together just like that. Okay, I'm going to show you how to roll out this pie dough. So we're going to take our blade out of our mixer, and I sprinkled some flour on my surface here, and we are just going to dump all of this onto my surface. You can do this on top of parchment paper too, that might be even easier. And we're just going to kind of knead this lightly. You don't want to really work it too much because you don't want it to be like bread. You're just really trying to get it to stick together. All right, so now it's time to make our apple pie filling while our dough is in the refrigerator chilling. So right here I have 3 pounds of apples. You choose your favorite type of apple that you want to use. I used what was at Costco. So you're going to take this and you're going to peel all 3 pounds of your apples, and then you're going to cut them up into cubes, and then I'll meet you back when we're done with that. Okay, now that we have all 3 pounds of our apples peeled and diced, we are going to add 1/4 cup of lemon juice over our apples. And then we also have a pinch of nutmeg, and we have 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, and we're going to mix this together. Probably should have got a little bigger bowl, but you know. You're the boss, applesauce. Okay, now we're gonna move on over to our stove, and we're going to make our apple pie filling so good. Okay, so next we're headed over to our stove, where we have a skillet here that we're going to heat up to about medium high. And we have 1/2 stick of butter here. Sorry, a whole stick of butter, which is 1/2 cup, and we're gonna melt that over medium heat. Okay, our butter is nice and melted now, so we are going to go ahead and add all of our apples to that melted butter. What we're trying to do here is get our apples to soften. We don't want them to be mushy like applesauce. We want it to be nice and soft, so when we bite into our apple pie, it is so good. So this is going to reduce, and we're gonna get a really yummy liquid on the bottom. I can't wait for you guys to see how this turns out. And we're even gonna put a lid on this while it cooks for about 7 minutes. You can stir it a couple times while it's cooking, but we are gonna let it get nice and cooked down. Okay, so our apple mixture is at a really good spot. The apples are not mushy, but they're definitely cooked well. So I'm going to take a slotted spoon and I'm going to take the apples out and put them in a bowl that has a strainer in it. Now we're going to focus on getting this mixture nice and thickened up before we add it back to our apple filling. Okay, this is looking perfect to me, and I can tell because when I take my spoon across, it doesn't come all back right away. It takes a second for the sauce to come back on itself. So it is thickened to the perfecto amount. And I'm going to pour this into the apple mixture. All right, our apple pie filling is in the fridge cooling, and while we do that, we're gonna go ahead and roll out our pie dough. So I took this out of the fridge and let it sit for a couple minutes so that it can kind of come back down to temperature a little bit. I floured my surface and I have my rolling pin, and I'm gonna take and put some more flour on, and I'm gonna sprinkle the top. We don't want sticking. Even get my hands. All right, we're gonna take it from the middle and just start going. And it's okay if there's some cracks in there, okay? Don't let it stress you out. If you see cracks, just push it back together. Okay, so once this is about a 1/4 inch thick like this, we're gonna go ahead and transfer it onto our pie pan. So a good way to do this is to take your rolling pin and you're going to roll your dough over your rolling pin, and this is going to help us pick it up nice and easy. And right over our pan. Just like that. Do want to try to get a little more centered than I did. All right, and we just kind of want to push it into our pan like this. Okay, and any excess that we have, we can just cut off with scissors or a knife. So I just have a knife here and I'm going to cut off the excess. Okie dokie, so we rolled out our second pie dough, and now we're going to cut it into strips so that it can be at the top of our apple pie. So I have a handy dandy pizza cutter or pie dough strip maker, and I am just going to take this dough that I rolled out and I'm going to cut it into some strips. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and add my filling into my pie, and then we're going to be able to do the top of our pie, which is going to be beautiful. Okay, so I poured this wonderful pie filling into our pie, and I'm just going to make sure it's evenly spread out so it's nice and flat. When our top goes on, it's going to not be all crazy. Now what I'm going to do is take one of these strips of pie dough and I'm going to place it right over the middle of my pie, just like that. And I'm going to just keep on going. Okay, so we have one part done. So now what we do is we're going to take every other piece and just fold it back, because now we are going to do work the other way. Okay, now we're going to fold back the opposite sides. And then just keep repeating until your entire pie is latticed, and then I'll show you what to do with the edges. Okay, so the top of our pie is all done. I took the edges and I trimmed off the excess, and then I just tucked them into the sides. Next, I have an egg whisked with a tablespoon of cream in this bowl here. I'm doing what's called an egg wash. You put this over the top because it's going to make it a really nice golden and crispy color on the top. So we're just going to evenly brush this over the entire pie, making sure you're getting it over all of the crust. When I bake my pies, I like to make a tent out of foil that you put around the pie so that the edges don't get too burnt. Right before I place my pie into the oven, I'm going to take some sugar and just sprinkle it over the pie. Okay, our pie is all tinted. It's got sugar sprinkled on the top over our egg wash. I'm going to put it on a cookie sheet and throw it in the oven at 350 for 45 to 50 minutes. Come back and we'll be eating some pie together. All right, we are all done baking our apple pie, and can I tell you, it smells so good. And hey, when you hear the right words at the right time, they taste so good. Have you ever heard the right words at the right time? If you have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And Proverbs says that a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver. Proverbs 25:11 says that. The Bible even says death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat of its fruits. Kind of like this apple pie. So when you're baking this pie or even just eating it, remember that your words are powerful. They can be used for evil or they can be used for good. They can heal or they can destroy. Let's use our words to heal, to build others up, and to encourage one another. Hey, thanks for baking with me today.